Okay, today we're going to look at the sine rule. Previously, we've been looking at the SOHCAHTOA formulas, and they're known as the trig ratios, really. So they're the trig ratios, and they can be used on a right angle triangle. So when we see the square there, that indicates right angle triangle. Today we're going to be using the sine rule, and the sine rule can be used on any triangle. So any triangle, doesn't matter. So any triangle. Now to use this rule, we need to learn how to label the triangle. So first of all, we label the triangle with, or the angles in the triangle, which there'll be 3, with the capital letters A, B, and C. So they're referring to the angles inside the triangle with the capital letter. Now, if you notice, if you go opposite the angle A to the other side of the triangle, that gets known as side A. And then you can see if we go opposite C, we give side C and B. So it's important that you label up your triangle first with the capital letters on the angles and then the sides, so that you can set up the sine rule correctly. So what is the sine rule exactly? So what you find, if you get the side length of A and divide it by sine angle A, you get the same value as if you did B side B over sine B, or C over sine C. So what you're going to see is we're going to use a combination of the two of these in to find an unknown. So for example, we might use these two to solve the problem, or we might use these two to solve the problem, or we might use that A and that C. So it just all depends on what we've been given and what we're trying to find out. So if you so let's just have a quick look at these rules. So to use the rule, you require 2 angles and 1 side, or you need an angle and its opposite side length and 1 other side. So they're the scenarios where the sine rule will be able to be used. And we're going to see you then use these fractions to set it up. Sometimes they ask us to find the largest side, and you just need to be aware that the largest side is always opposite the largest angle. So if you thought about it, that makes sense in a right angle triangle. 90 degrees will be the biggest angle, and if you think opposite the 90 is the hypotenuse, which you know is the largest side in a right angle triangle. Alright, so let's go back to this sine rule and do this example over here. So you can see we've been given angle C, and side C is what they want us to find out, because if you look up here they said find length AB, so that means the distance between A and B. So for us it's find little c. Now if you look at what else we've been given, we've actually been given angle B and side B. So that would be side B over here. So this determines which fractions I'm going to use. Because I need the C, I would write that one out. And then I'm going to use one I have of the others. And because I have the B, the B values, I'm going to use that. So then I simply pop them in, put what we do know into your formulas. So I know that, 10 over sine 70. And once you've got it to this situation, you can put solve in your calculator, comma C, and you'll be able to get what C equals. So here I've put it into the calculator, solve. So just remember, if you get this answer, mine's on exact, just press Control Enter to get your decimal answer. So I'll just round that to 1 decimal place and would say C, or length, it's actually called AB in this question, is 5.5 centimeters. Okay, so here we're going to give it another go. Let's have a look at, it's asking me to find side C. So C is the question, so I'm going to have to use C, and then I need to use another one which I have. Now if you look, I have B. B is the only other side length, so that means I need to get angle B. Now it's not there at the moment, but we can work that out because all the angles in a triangle need to add up to 180. So if I've already got 150, this angle B would have to be 30 degrees. So we now can use this to solve. So we had to use C because that's the question, and now we're going to use B because we have both the pieces of information. So I'll leave C on there and I'll do sine 50 equals 8 over sine 30. And once again, we can go into the calculator, and put solve, comma, C, and work that one out. Okay, into the calculator I have popped it, and I'm checking that it says 1 decimal place, so I'm going to write C equaled 12.3. There's no units, so I'm just going to leave my answer like that. Okay, so let's try this one. This one they want me to find angle B. So this is going to be the question, so I definitely need side B. And if I look, I've been given A, and this would also be side A. So I've been given both of them. So that is the two rules I'm going to use. I'm going to use B over sine B equals A over sine A. And I'll substitute in. So I've got B, little side B is 6 over sine, I'm just going to call the angle we don't know X, and then A is 7 over sine 120. Okay, so I'll pop that into the calculator. Okay, so I popped it into the calculator and I did solve, and you can see I get this funny answer because it's on exact. So I press Control Enter and I still get this weird situation here where I'm getting two sort of answers. It says X with this weird thing. So what we want to do, we don't want that. So we can get around by just putting an N in front of our N solve. So if we do an N, we're going to get the one answer. So we'll see here, we end up with the answer that we're going to say angle B equals, now it's set to 1 decimal place, 47.9 degrees. Okay, so this leads us into the ambiguous case rule. So what happens is sometimes in a practical situation, there could be there's two possible answers. And what it means is here, if we, it's probably best if I look down here like this one to explain. So what they're saying, if we have two triangles that have two corresponding sides, so what they're saying that the length of this A is the same as this A, and then they're saying the length of this B is the same length in this B. But then they're saying, and they're also saying that angle B is the same in these two triangles. So this angle in here is the same. But if you're given that scenario, so you don't have the diagram and you're just told that you're told these three things that we've got, you actually can have two possible answers, because what could happen is The third line of the triangle might just be a small line, like in this one, and when that happens, the angle will be 110, and it changes obviously that angle up there too. If we have a bigger line along here, and you can see therefore B joins out there, it reduces this angle and obviously changes that one too. So sometimes we only need two sides and an angle to use the sine rule. So if we were given just verb, like with written this, this and this, and the purple and the B angle, if we're given those things, we actually don't know which scenario it could be, and there's two possible answers. So the way you find the two possible answers is you can still do n solve. So say we do n solve here, and we'd end up with, we'd have A over sine A equals B over sine B. And so if you look at it, what we were trying to find out is actually angle A there. We were showing that there's two possible solutions for angle A. So that would be our unknown in there. So if we do comma X. So what you end up with, you always, if you do n solve, you get the smaller angle. So we would have got that angle A equals 70 degrees. So that would have been this scenario here. To get the other scenario, when you have a case like this, so they might say, what's the other situation? The way you get the other angle is you always do 180 minus the first one you got. So minus 70 equals 110. So you can see that's how we've come up with the other solution there, when it could be that. So sometimes you have to look at the diagram and work out which scenario you might have, and remember also that a triangle has to add up to 180. So you have to be careful with that too, so you don't go over. So so that's the ambiguous case, and we'll do an example a bit later in the video. So here's a case of the ambiguous case that we're gonna go through. So it says in the triangle ABC, A equals 30, so we know that one. C equals 7 centimeters, so you definitely know that one. And A equals 4. So this is the case where if you only know that, A could swing that way or A could swing out that way, meaning we don't really know, because we don't know the length of this. It could be that full length, or it could just be to that length. So we got to look at, now it'll say the question has said find two possible values for C. So we want this angle C. So that you'll know is an ambiguous case when they want you to give two possible answers, and we'll just remember its things. So we're needing to use C because that's what we want to find. We want to find angle C, so I'm going to have to use sine C. And then I'll look at what else I've been given. I've actually been given A. So I'm going to use A over sine A. So we'll pop these all in what we know. And A is 4 and A is 30 degrees. So we're going to pop it into the calculator, and we're going to do n solve here, comma C. Now what that's going to do, when we do n solve, you are given the smaller scenario, of C. Okay, so really I'm getting given this is my first scenario that I'm finding, because that angle is smaller than this angle, which is bigger. So when we do that on our calculator, we'll find out what that is. So scenario 1, I get C to equal 61.04 degrees. To get the C2, the second scenario, which is over here, you need to do 180 minus your first scenario degrees, and that will give you the other option. So I get 118.96 degrees. So this angle here, which you can see it's more than 90, that one is 118.96, where this one over here was 61. Okay, so there's your two scenarios. Just look out when you're asked to find two and make sure you do that, or look at the diagram to make sure, because say you might only been given the bigger scenario diagram, you need to realize that you have that second option, not the first option. Alright, so with the application of sine, you sometimes get given a diagram and sometimes you may not be. So if you're not, you really need to draw it. So Leo wants to tie a rope from point A to B. So here is along here, he wants to tie a rope. He needs to know the length of the rope. Alright, so now you know AB, length AB equals the rope, and that's the question. Okay, he stood at A. When he saw a tree at B, and it made an angle of 50 degrees with the riverbank. So he's here at A, and the angle of that it makes with the riverbank. So here is the riverbank, and that's like the horizontal, the straight line along there. This is the riverbank, and it makes an angle of 50. He then walks 200 meters to point C, and then they say that the tree is on an angle of 30 degrees with the riverbank. So there you go. So you've been given that. Now in the end, you've got to find the rope length. So if we label up our triangle with the sides like I normally do. Now when we get to this point, I like to just redraw my triangle out away from the diagram as such, so it's a little bit more simpler. And I'll put in my little sides like that, and then I might write in what I know. So I've got 30 degrees, 50 degrees, 200, and this C is the question because that's the length of the rope, AB. So I definitely need C, so I'll use the sine C. And the only other one that I've got the side of B here, so that means I need angle B, but if we remember, they all have to add up to 180, so that would make this one having to be 100. So we're going to use B, because I've now got both of those pieces of information, and off I would go in filling in it. So I know angle C is 30 degrees and B is 200 over sine 100, and then we can pop in solve, comma C, and let's get our answer. So it's set to 2 decimal places, so always check that. So I got 101.54 meters. So I might just write a final statement. Therefore, length AB equals 101.54 meters. Okay, and pop that in. Or actually, we could maybe call it the rope, because that's what they said.